I found the letters on a Tuesday afternoon, hidden in a shoebox at the back of my father's closet. 15 years of wondering why my parents divorced, why my mother left without explanation, why my childhood shattered overnight. And there it was. Written proof that everything I believed was a lie. What did I do with that truth? It tore our family apart all over again. But this time I was the one holding the match. If you've ever felt the sting of family betrayal, if you've ever discovered a truth so dark it changed everything you thought you knew, this story is for you. Hit that subscribe button, like this video, and leave a comment of where you are watching from, because what you're about to hear isn't just about revenge. It's about justice 15 years in the making. Grab your cup of coffee, sit tight, and let me tell you how all this happened. My name is Layla Mansour and I'm 32 years old. I run a successful real estate development company in Houston, Texas, specializing in commercial properties. I didn't get here by accident. I clawed my way up from nothing, building my business with my bare hands after my childhood taught me one brutal lesson. Trust no one, rely on yourself, and never let anyone see you break. 15 years ago, when I was 17, my world ended on a random Thursday morning in March. I remember waking up to silence. Our house was never silent. My mother, Amira, always had music playing while she made breakfast. Arabic songs from her childhood in Lebanon, mixed with American pop hits. The kitchen would smell like za'atar and eggs, and my father, Khalid, would be reading the newspaper at the table, occasionally looking up to smile at her. They were happy, or at least I thought they were. That Thursday there was no music. No smell of breakfast. Just an empty kitchen and my father sitting alone at the table, his face gray, staring at nothing. "Where's Mom?" I asked, my teenage brain still foggy with sleep. He didn't look at me. "She's gone." 2 words. That's all he gave me. "She's gone." I laughed. I actually laughed because it seemed like such a ridiculous thing to say. Gone where? To the store? To visit Aunt Rania? Gone didn't mean gone forever. Gone didn't mean my mother had walked out of our house in the middle of the night and would never come back. But that's exactly what it meant. "What do you mean, gone?" I pressed, setting my backpack down. "When's she coming back?" My father finally looked at me, and I'll never forget his eyes. They were hollow and empty. Like someone had reached inside him and scooped out everything that made him human. "She's not coming back, Layla. Your mother and I are getting divorced. She's already filed the papers." The world tilted. I gripped the edge of the counter, my knuckles white. What? What happened? "It doesn't matter why. It matters to me." My voice cracked, tears already burning my eyes. "Dad, what happened? Did you fight? Can you fix it?" He stood up slowly, folding the newspaper with shaking hands. "Some things can't be fixed. Your mother made her choice. We need to respect that." Respect that? How was I supposed to respect my mother abandoning us without explanation? How was I supposed to go to school and pretend everything was fine when my entire life had just imploded? I tried calling her. Over and over. Her phone went straight to voicemail. I texted, I emailed, I even messaged her on Facebook. Nothing from her. 3 days later, a lawyer showed up at our door with divorce papers for my father to sign. Clean, cold, legal documents that reduced 17 years of marriage to a list of assets to be divided. My father signed them without reading. His hand didn't even shake. "Dad, aren't you going to fight this?" I begged. "Aren't you going to try to talk to her?" "There's nothing to say," he replied, his voice flat. "She wants to leave. I won't force her to stay." I didn't understand. I couldn't understand. My parents had been solid. They'd been the couple other families looked up to. They held hands at the grocery store. They laughed at each other's jokes. They taught me what love was supposed to look like. And then it was just over. The divorce was finalized within 6 weeks. My mother took half of everything and disappeared. No forwarding address. No explanation. No goodbye. I grieved like she died. Because in a way she had. The mother I knew, the woman who braided my hair and taught me to make tabbouleh and stayed up late helping me with homework. That woman vanished. My father became a ghost. He went to work at his accounting firm, came home, ate dinner in silence, and went to bed. On weekends he sat in his chair and stared at the wall. He stopped going to the mosque. Stopped seeing friends and stopped living really. I tried to take care of him. I cooked, I cleaned, I made sure the bills got paid. I became a parent while I was still technically a child. And I buried my own pain so deep I almost convinced myself it wasn't there. But it was there. festering, growing and turning into something dark and hard inside my chest. I threw myself into school, graduated top of my class, got a full scholarship to the University of Texas, studied business and real estate development with a single-minded focus that terrified my professors. I didn't date, didn't party, didn't make close friends. I worked. I studied. I built walls around myself so high that no one could ever hurt me the way my mother had hurt my father. By the time I was 25, I'd started my own company. By 30, I was managing a portfolio worth $40 million. I was successful, respected, and feared. But I was also alone. My father and I had a functional relationship. We had dinner once a week. We talked about work, about the weather, about nothing that mattered. We never talked about her. Never said her name. It was like Amira Mansour had never existed. Until 3 weeks ago. My father had a stroke. Not a massive one, but enough to land him in the hospital for 4 days. I took time off work to stay with him, to manage his care, to sort through the logistics of his recovery. He'd need help at home for a while. Physical therapy. Medication management. Someone to check on him daily. I'm hiring a nurse, I told him as I drove him home from the hospital. No need, he said, his voice still a little slurred from the stroke. I'm fine. You're not fine, Dad. You had a stroke. You need help. He didn't argue further. That should have been my first clue that something was wrong. My father was stubborn. He never gave in that easily. I got him settled in his house. The same house we'd lived in when I was a teenager, though he'd changed very little about it over the years. It was like a time capsule. Frozen in the past. I need to grab some paperwork from your office for the insurance, I told him. Do you keep everything in the filing cabinet? He hesitated. Just for a second. But I noticed. Yes, he said finally. Bottom drawer. Labeled medical. I went to his home office, a small room that still smelled like his cologne and old books. The filing cabinet was ancient, a scratched metal thing that had been around since before I was born. I opened the bottom drawer and found the medical files easily enough. But as I was pulling them out, my hand bumped against something at the very back of the drawer. A shoebox. I shouldn't have opened it. It wasn't labeled. It was clearly hidden. But something made me pull it out and I lifted the lid. Inside were letters. Dozens of them. Some in envelopes, some loose. All in my mother's handwriting. My heart stopped. I picked up the first one with trembling hands. It was dated 6 months after the divorce. Khalid, I know you won't read this. I know you'll probably burn it without opening the envelope. But I have to try. I have to make you understand that I never wanted to leave. That I never stopped loving you or Layla. That everything I did because I had no choice. They gave me an ultimatum. Leave or they would destroy you. Destroy everything you'd built. I couldn't let that happen. I couldn't watch them ruin you. Please, please believe me. This wasn't what I wanted. This was never what I wanted. I love you. I will always love you. Amira. I couldn't breathe. My hands shook so badly the paper rattled. They. Who were they? What ultimatum? What was she talking about? I grabbed another letter. Then another. There were dozens spanning years. All of them saying variations of the same thing. I was forced to leave. I had no choice. Please forgive me. Please tell Layla I'm sorry. And my father had kept every single one. Hidden in a shoebox. Never responded. Never acknowledged. But here's what made my blood run cold. In several of the letters my mother mentioned a name. The same name over and over. Your brother did this. Tariq did this to us. Tariq Mansour. My uncle. My father's younger brother. I sat on the floor of that office, surrounded by 15 years of my mother's pain, and felt something crack open inside me. My father knew. He'd known this whole time that my mother didn't want to leave. That she'd been forced out. And he'd said nothing. I did nothing. I thought about all those years of silence. All those dinners where we pretended she'd never existed. All those nights I'd cried myself to sleep wondering what I'd done wrong, why I wasn't enough to make her stay. And she'd been reaching out. Trying to explain. Begging for understanding. And my father had hidden it from me. The betrayal was so complete, so total, that I actually felt physical pain in my chest. Like someone had reached in and squeezed my heart until it burst. I gathered every letter carefully, put them back in the shoebox and walked out of that office with my hands steady and my face blank. My father was in the living room watching television. Find what you needed? He asked without looking at me. Yes, I said quietly. I found exactly what I needed. He glanced up then and something in my expression made him go pale. Layla. Not now, I cut him off. We'll talk later. After I've had time to process what I just found. I left his house without another word. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at my kitchen table with the shoebox in front of me and read every single letter my mother had written. By dawn I had a timeline. A narrative. A picture of what had really happened 15 years ago. And it was so much worse than I'd imagined. According to my mother's letters, it started with a business deal gone wrong. My Uncle Tariq had always been the charming one in the family. Smooth, successful, the kind of man who could sell ice to someone living in Alaska. He ran an import-export business and on paper he was doing very well. Too well as it turned out. 15 years ago my uncle had gotten involved in something illegal. The letters weren't specific about what. My mother either didn't know the details or was too afraid to write them down. But it was serious enough that federal investigators were sniffing around. And somehow my uncle had made it look like my father was involved. Forged documents. Fabricated email trails. Planted evidence in my father's accounting firm that connected him to Tariq's criminal activities. My father, who followed every rule, who filed his taxes 3 months early, who wouldn't even jaywalk. Framed for federal crimes he knew nothing about. According to my mother's letters, Tariq came to them privately. Showed them what he'd done. Explained very calmly that if the investigation continued, my father would go to prison for 20 years minimum. Unless my mother agreed to leave. Why would her leaving matter? That was the question I kept coming back to as I read through the letters. And then I found the answer buried in a letter from year 3. He wanted you alone. Broken. So you'd need him. So you'd trust him. So you'd make him a partner in your firm. My stomach turned. My uncle had wanted control of my father's accounting firm. It was small, but it had a client list of wealthy individuals and businesses. Access to their financial records and their trust. But my father would never have made Tariq a partner. They'd worked together once before years earlier and my father had been burned. He told me once that Tariq was too careless with other people's money. So Tariq found another way. He framed my father for crimes that would destroy him. And then he told my mother that he'd make it all go away, destroy the evidence, redirect the investigation, if she left and never contacted us again. She was supposed to be the sacrifice that saved my father's life. And it worked. My mother left. My father never got arrested. The investigation presumably went nowhere. And a year later, Tariq Mansour became a partner in my father's firm. I sat back in my chair, the letter shaking in my hands. My father knew. Maybe not at first, but eventually he must have figured it out. All those letters my mother sent, explaining, begging and confessing, he'd read them. Keep them. And still brought Tariq into his business. Still let the man who'd destroyed our family profit from that destruction. Why? Was he scared? Was Tariq still holding the forged evidence over his head? Or had my father just given up? Accepted that this was the price of staying out of prison? I needed answers. But more than that, I needed my mother. I hadn't seen or spoken to Amira Mansour in 15 years. I didn't even know if she was still alive, still in Texas, still using her married name. But I was a real estate developer. I knew how to find people. I had access to databases, skip tracers and private investigators. Took me 3 days. Amira Mansour was living in San Antonio, about 3 hours south of Houston. She was working as a translator for a legal aid organization, helping Arabic-speaking immigrants navigate the American legal system. Of course she was. Even after everything, she was still helping people. I stared at her address on my computer screen, my cursor hovering over the email icon. 15 years. 15 years of silence. What do you even say? Dear Mom, I found out why you left. I know what Uncle Tariq did. I know Dad kept your letters. I'm sorry I hated you for so long. Too simple. Too small for the enormity of what had been stolen from us. In the end, I didn't email. I got in my car and drove to San Antonio. Her apartment was in a modest complex near downtown. 2nd floor, corner unit. I could see her balcony from the parking lot, decorated with potted herbs and wind chimes. So ordinary. So unlike the melodramatic reunion I'd imagined. My mother looked older, of course. Grayer and thinner. But her eyes were the same warm brown I remembered, and when she saw me, they filled with tears so fast it was like turning on a faucet. Layla, she whispered. Her hand came up to her mouth. Oh my God. Layla. Hi, Mom, I said, and my voice cracked. She pulled me inside and wrapped her arms around me, and I let myself cry for the first time in 15 years. I really cried. The kind of crying that shakes your whole body, that empties you out until you're hollow and gasping. We stood in her tiny entryway and held each other, and neither of us said anything because there was too much to say and not enough words in the world. Finally, she pulled back, her hands framing my face. Look at you, she said, her voice thick. You're so beautiful. So grown up. I missed everything. I missed all of it. I know why you left, I told her. I found your letters. All of them. In Dad's office. Her face crumpled. He kept them. I thought he threw them away. I thought he hated me. He kept everyone. But he never told me. Never let me know you were trying to reach us. We sat on her couch and I asked her to tell me everything. The whole story from beginning to end. She did. The details were worse than the letters suggested. Tarek hadn't just framed my father, he'd threatened to frame me too. Told my mother that if she didn't leave quietly, he'd plant evidence that I was involved in drug trafficking. I was 17. I would have been tried as an adult. My mother had a choice. Leave and save both of us or stay and watch us both go to prison. So she left. Tarek made sure she couldn't contact us. He monitored my father's phone, his email. Any attempt my mother made to reach out, Tarek intercepted. Except for the letters. She'd sent them to my father's office, addressed to him personally, marked confidential. Tarek never saw them. But my father did. Why didn't he respond? I asked. Why didn't he tell me? Why didn't he fight back? My mother's face was full of sorrow. Because Tarek still has the evidence. Or at least your father thinks he does. He's terrified that if he tries to fight, if he tries to expose what Tarek did, Tarek will destroy him and destroy you. So he just gave up? Let Tarek win. He did what he thought he had to do to protect you, Layla. Even if it meant losing me. Even if it meant losing himself. I felt that anger again rising up hot and bitter in my throat. My father had been protecting me. My mother had been protecting me. And in the process they'd both sacrificed everything. Our family. Our happiness. 15 years of our lives. All because of Tarek Mansour. Where is he now? Asked my voice cold. Tarek. Where is he? My mother looked at me warily. Layla, what are you thinking? I'm thinking, I said slowly, that it's time Uncle Tarek paid for what he did. My mother tried to talk me out of it. Layla, please, she said, gripping my hands across her coffee table. He's dangerous. He's proven that. If you go after him, he could hurt you. He could hurt your father. Please just let it go. Let it go. I'd spent 15 years letting it go. 15 years swallowing the pain of my mother's abandonment, watching my father turn into a ghost, building walls around my heart so high I could barely feel anything anymore. And now I was supposed to just let it go? No, I said quietly. I can't do that, Mom. He stole 15 years from us. He destroyed our family. And he's been profiting from it this whole time. Revenge won't give you those years back. Maybe not. But it'll make sure he doesn't steal anything else from anyone ever again. My mother's eyes searched my face, and I saw the moment she realized I'd already made up my mind. Her shoulders sagged. You're just like your father, she said softly. Stubborn and principled. Once you decide something is right, nothing can change your mind. Then you understand why I have to do this. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she stood up and walked to her bedroom. When she came back, she was holding a folder. I've been keeping records, she said, setting it on the table between us. Everything I could find out about what Tarek did. The companies he used. The accounts he opened in your father's name. I didn't know what I was going to do with it, but I couldn't just forget. Couldn't pretend it didn't happen. I opened the folder. Inside were bank statements, incorporation documents, shipping manifests. Years worth of paper trail. You've been investigating him? Not actively. But I work with lawyers now. I learned how to research. How to find public records. And I've had a lot of time to think about what he did to us. I looked up at my mother, seeing her clearly for the first time in 15 years. She wasn't just a victim. She was a survivor. Fighter. She'd been gathering ammunition even when she had no plan to use it. Help me, I said. Help me take him down. My mother sat down beside me and together we started building a case. The first thing I did was hire a private investigator. Not just any PI. I needed someone with experience in financial crimes, someone who could dig deep without leaving traces. His name was Omar Hassan, a former FBI agent who'd gone private after 20 years with the Bureau. He specialized in white-collar crime and his rates were astronomical. I paid them without blinking. I met Omar at his office in downtown Houston, a sleek space with glass walls and minimalist furniture. He was in his 50s, gray-haired, with sharp eyes that seemed to see right through you. "Ms. Mansour," he said, shaking my hand. "Your message said you needed help with a family matter." "A criminal matter," I corrected. "Involving my uncle. He framed my father for federal crimes 15 years ago to extort my mother into leaving. I need proof. I need everything." Omar raised an eyebrow. "That's a serious allegation. Do you have any evidence to support it?" I handed him my mother's folder. "Start with this." He spent 20 minutes reading through the documents, his expression never changing. Finally he looked up. "This is good," he said. "But it's not enough. Most of this is circumstantial. You need direct evidence. Bank records showing money moving from accounts in your father's name to accounts controlled by your uncle. Communication records showing he was the one making the transactions. Testimony from anyone who knew what he was doing. Can you get that?" Omar smiled slightly. "Ms. Mansour, I can get anything. But it takes time and money. I have both." We shook on it. While Omar worked on the financial trail, I started gathering information from another angle. Tariq's current business. My uncle was still a partner in my father's accounting firm, Mansour and Associates. But according to the firm's website, he also ran his own consulting company on the side, something called Gulf Shore Advisors. I started researching Gulf Shore Advisors. On the surface it looked legitimate. They provided financial consulting services to small and mid-sized businesses, mostly in the import-export sector. But when I dug deeper, things got murky. Shell companies. Addresses that led to empty offices. Client lists that seemed to consist mostly of businesses with no online presence. It reminded me of the red flags you look for in money laundering operations. I needed someone on the inside. Someone who could see what Tariq was really doing with Gulf Shore Advisors. And I knew exactly who to ask. Rami Khalil had been my father's junior partner at Mansour and Associates for 8 years. He was 35, whip-smart and deeply undervalued by my father and Tariq. I'd met him at the firm's holiday party a few years back, and we'd stayed in casual contact. More importantly, I knew Rami was ambitious. He wanted to make a senior partner, but Tariq kept blocking him. I invited Rami to lunch at an upscale restaurant in Midtown. Neutral territory. "Layla," he said, standing to greet me. "This is a surprise." "What's the occasion?" "I need your help with something," I said once we'd ordered. "Something sensitive." Rami leaned back in his chair, studying me. "I'm listening." "What do you know about Tariq's other business?" "Gulf Shore Advisors." His expression shifted. Became guarded. "Why do you ask?" "Because I think he's using it to do something illegal. And I think he might be using my father's firm to cover his tracks." Rami was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "You're not wrong." My heart rate picked up. "Tell me." "I can't prove anything," Rami said carefully. "But there have been irregularities. Funds moving through client accounts in ways that don't make sense. Tariq handles those accounts personally. Won't let anyone else touch them. And when I've asked questions, he shuts me down hard." "What kind of irregularities?" "Large sums coming in from overseas. Getting broken up into smaller amounts. Distributed to various business accounts. Then consolidated again and moved back out. It's classic structuring. But I can't audit those accounts without Tariq's approval and he'll never give it." Structuring. Breaking up large transactions to avoid reporting requirements. It was a form of money laundering. "If I could get you access to those accounts," I said slowly, "could you document what he's doing?" Rami's eyes narrowed. "Layla, what are you planning?" "Justice," I said simply. "For my father. For my mother. For everyone Tariq has been manipulated and used over the years." "This could destroy the firm," Rami warned. "Your father's reputation." "My father's reputation is already built on a lie," I interrupted. "Tariq made sure of that 15 years ago. It's time the truth came out." Rami was quiet, his fingers drumming on the table. I could see him weighing the risks, calculating the angles. Finally he nodded. Tell me what you need. Over the next 6 weeks I barely slept. Omar was pulling financial records from 15 years ago, painstakingly reconstructing the paper trail Tariq had created to frame my father. It was slow work. Many of the original documents had been destroyed or were buried in storage facilities. But Omar was thorough. He found bank accounts opened in my father's name that my father had never known about. He found wire transfer records showing money moving from those accounts to offshore companies. He found email exchanges between Tariq and the federal investigators, exchanges that showed Tariq himself had tipped them off about the suspicious activity. It was all there. The entire frame job, documented and preserved. Meanwhile, Rami was gathering evidence from inside the firm. He'd figured out Tariq's password system. The man was arrogant enough to use variations of the same password across multiple accounts, and started making copies of everything. Client files, bank statements, internal memos, all showing a pattern of money moving through Mansour and Associates in ways that violated banking regulations. And then Rami found something even better. Layla, you need to see this, he said over the phone one night. I could hear the excitement in his voice. What is it? Emails. Between Tariq and his Gulf Shore clients. He's not even trying to hide it. He's explicitly discussing how to move money without triggering reporting requirements. He's documenting his own crimes. Send them to me. Now. The emails came through 5 minutes later and I read them with growing satisfaction. Tariq thought he was untouchable. He'd gotten away with destroying my family 15 years ago and he'd grown complacent. He was about to learn that was a mistake. I met with my mother every weekend during those 6 weeks. We sat in her apartment and went over everything we'd found, building our case piece by piece. She changed during this time. There was a light in her eyes that I hadn't seen since I was a child. Purpose and hope. Do you really think this will work? She asked one evening as we organized documents into folders. Yes, I said. We have everything we need. Bank records, emails, testimony from Rami. Omar even found the original forged documents Tariq used to frame Dad. Once we turn this over to the authorities, Tariq is finished. And your father? That was the complicated part. My father. I hadn't spoken to him since the day I found the letters. I'd been avoiding him, still processing my anger at his silence, his complicity. But I couldn't do this without him. He was the victim. His testimony would be crucial. I need to talk to Dad, I said. Tell him what we found. Get him to agree to testify. My mother looked worried. He's going to be scared, Layla. Tariq has controlled him for so long. He might not believe we can win. Then I'll make him believe, I said. I went to my father's house on a Sunday afternoon. He was in the backyard tending to his roses. He'd always loved roses. My mother used to tease him about spending more time with his flowers than with her. Layla, he said, looking up as I approached. I didn't know you were coming. We need to talk, I said. Inside. Now. Something in my tone made him put down his gardening shears and follow me without argument. We sat in his living room, the same room where I'd played as a child, where we'd opened Christmas presents and celebrated birthdays. Felt like a museum now. A monument to a life that no longer existed. I found Mom's letters, I said without preamble. All of them. And I know what Tariq did. My father's face went pale. Layla. Don't, I cut him off. Don't try to explain it away or tell me it was complicated. You knew Mom didn't want to leave. You knew Tariq forced her out. And you kept it from me for 15 years. I was protecting you, he said, his voice hoarse. Tariq still has the evidence. If I'd fought back, if I'd told you, he would have destroyed us. I know. Mom explained it to me. But Dad, that was 15 years ago. We can fight back now. We can expose what he did. My father shook his head slowly. You don't understand. Tariq is dangerous. He's connected. He's a criminal, I interrupted. And I have proof. Bank records, emails, testimony. We need to put him in prison for the rest of his life. I opened my briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. I handed it to my father, watching as he flipped through page after page of evidence. His hands started shaking. Where did you get all this? He whispered. I hired an investigator. I had help from someone inside the firm. And Mom kept records. All these years she was keeping records. Amira, my father said, and his eyes filled with tears. You talked to your mother? Yes. She lives in San Antonio. She never stopped trying to reach us, Dad. She never stopped loving us. But you never told me. You kept us apart. I thought I was protecting you, he repeated, his voice breaking. I thought if you knew the truth, Tarek would come after you too. So you let me hate her instead? The anger was back, hot and sharp in my throat. You let me spend my entire adult life thinking she abandoned us, thinking I wasn't enough to make her stay when the whole time she was forced out? I'm sorry, my father said, tears streaming down his face. Layla, I'm so sorry. I didn't know what else to do. I was terrified. I still am. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. I know you're scared, but we have a chance to make this right. To get justice for what he did to our family. But I need you to testify. I need you to tell the truth about what happened. My father looked at the folder in his hands, at 15 years of evidence documenting his brother's crimes. He'll destroy me, he said quietly. Even if we win, even if he goes to prison, he'll release those forged documents. My reputation will be ruined. The firm will collapse. The firm is already built on lies, I said. And your reputation? That you're a victim. Once the truth comes out, people will understand that. But if you stay silent, if you let Tarek keep controlling you, then he really has won. My father was quiet for a long time. I watched emotions play across his face. Fear, shame, anger, and hope. Finally, he looked up at me. What do you need me to do? We moved fast after that. There was no room for hesitation, no time for second-guessing. Omar compiled everything into a comprehensive report. The original frame job, the forged documents, the money laundering through Gulf Shore advisors, the extortion that forced my mother to leave. Every crime Tarek had committed, documented and cross-referenced. Rami prepared his testimony, corroborating the financial irregularities at Mansour and Associates and confirming that Tarek had exclusive control over the suspicious accounts. My mother wrote out her statement, detailing the threats Tarek had made, the ultimatum she'd been given, the 15 years of exile. My father finally found his courage. He met with Omar and gave a full deposition. He explained how Tarek had shown him the forged documents, how he'd been told he would go to prison if he didn't cooperate, how he'd been forced to make Tarek a partner in his firm. He also gave us something crucial, the location where Tarek kept his personal files. He has a storage unit, my father said. In Pearland. He doesn't think I know about it, but I followed him there once years ago. He goes every few months. Updates his files. What kind of files? Omar asked. Insurance, my father said bitterly. Evidence he's kept on everyone he's ever manipulated. Including the original documents he forged in my name. He keeps it all just in case he ever needs leverage again. Omar smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile. That's perfect. If we can get access to that unit, we'll have everything we need. How do we get access? I asked. Omar's smile widened. Leave that to me. It took Omar 2 weeks to get into the storage unit. I don't know exactly how he did it, and I didn't ask. All I know is that one morning he called me and said, "We're in." The contents of Tarek's storage unit were damning. He'd kept everything. Copies of the documents he'd forged in my father's name. Correspondence with his criminal associates. Bank records showing the money he'd laundered. Even recordings, actual audio recordings, of conversations where he'd threatened people into compliance. He'd documented his own crimes in meticulous detail, keeping it all as leverage for future manipulation. It was the work of a man who thought he was invincible. Omar made copies of everything. Then he carefully returned the originals to the unit, exactly as they'd been. We didn't want Tarek to know we'd found his insurance policy. Not yet. We turned everything over to the FBI on a Wednesday morning in late September. Omar had contacts in the Bureau's Financial Crimes Division. We met with 2 agents in a secure conference room and spent 4 hours walking them through the evidence. The agents' faces remained neutral throughout, but I could see their interest growing. Money laundering, wire fraud, extortion, obstruction of justice. This was a prosecutor's dream case. "We'll need to verify all of this," the lead agent said when we'd finished. Her name was Agent Farah Nasser, and she looked like she didn't suffer fools. But if it checks out, we'll move forward with charges. How long will verification take? I asked. 2 weeks. Maybe 3. And in the meantime? In the meantime, you do nothing, Agent Nasser said firmly. You don't contact Tariq Mansour. You don't tip him off. You go about your lives as if nothing has changed. Can you do that? I looked at my father, at my mother sitting beside him, their first time in the same room in 15 years. I looked at Omar, at Rami. Yes, I said. We can do that. Those 3 weeks were the longest of my life. I went to work every day, managed my properties and attended meetings. All while knowing that at any moment, the FBI could be knocking on Tariq's door. My father continued going to the firm. Seeing Tariq every day. Sitting across from him in partner meetings. Acting like everything was normal. I don't know how he did it. I would have broken. But maybe that's what 15 years of fear had taught him. How to hide. How to pretend. Rami stayed vigilant, watching for any sign that Tariq suspected something. But Tariq remained his usual arrogant self, barking orders, taking credit for other people's work, treating everyone around him like they existed solely to serve him. And then on a Thursday morning in mid-October it happened. I was in my office when my father called. They're here, he said, his voice shaking. FBI. They're arresting him. I dropped everything and drove to the firm. By the time I arrived it was over. Tariq was already in handcuffs, being led out of the building by federal agents. A crowd had gathered on the sidewalk. Employees, clients, curious passers-by. I stood at the back of the crowd and watched as they put him in the car. He looked smaller somehow. Diminished. Without his swagger and his threats, he was just a middle-aged man in handcuffs, his face pale with shock. He hadn't seen it coming. Hadn't believed anyone would ever dare to challenge him. As the car pulled away I felt something loosen in my chest. Not quite a relief. Not quite satisfied. Something more complicated. Justice. That's what it was. Justice 15 years in the making. The trial took 8 months. Tariq's lawyers tried everything. They claimed the evidence was fabricated. They argued entrapment. They attacked my father's credibility, pointing out that he'd waited 15 years to come forward. But the evidence was overwhelming. Omar had done his job too well. Every transaction, every forged document, every threat. It was all there, documented and irrefutable. My mother testified. She sat in the witness box and told the court about the ultimatum Tariq had given her. About being forced to choose between leaving her family or watching them be destroyed. Her voice never wavered. My father testified. He explained how Tariq had framed him, how he'd been too terrified to fight back, how he'd lived under his brother's control for 15 years. He cried on the stand. I'd never seen my father cry before. Rami testified about the money laundering, the shell companies, the flagrant violations of banking regulations. And Omar presented the evidence from the storage unit. Those recordings Tariq had made? They played in an open court. His own voice threatening people. Bragging about his schemes. Laughing about how easy it was to manipulate those who trusted him. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced Tariq to 22 years in federal prison. No possibility of parole for at least 15 years. 15 years. The same amount of time he'd stolen from our family. The symmetry felt like its own kind of justice. After the sentencing we stood outside the courthouse. Me, my mother, my father. Together for the first time in 15 years. What happens now? My father asked quietly. My mother looked at him. There was pain in her eyes but also something softer. Forgiveness maybe. Or at least the possibility of it. Now, she said. Now we figure out how to be a family again. It wasn't that simple, of course. 15 years of damage doesn't heal overnight. My parents started with coffee meetings. Awkward conversations about neutral topics. Slowly rebuilding the foundation that Tariq had destroyed. I watched them carefully, protectively. I still had anger toward my father for the years he'd kept silent. But I was learning that anger and love can exist simultaneously. That forgiveness is a process, not a moment. 3 months after the trial ended, something unexpected happened. I was at my office when I got a call from Agent Nasser. Ms. Mansour, she said. I thought you'd want to know. We've received information from other victims. People Tariq blackmailed over the years. They're coming forward now that he's in prison. We're building additional cases. How many people? I asked. 14 so far. Could be more. 14 families. 14 lives he'd manipulated and destroyed. All of them suffering in silence, too afraid to speak up. He'll know. There's something else, Agent Nasser continued. Several of them want to thank you. They said if you hadn't been brave enough to come forward, they never would have found their own courage. I hung up the phone and sat in silence for a long time. I'd started this for my family. For 15 years Tariq had stolen from us. For my mother's exile and my father's fear and my own broken childhood. But somewhere along the way it had become bigger than that. Justice for one has become justice for many. My father sold his stake in Mansour and Associates. Rami bought him out and renamed the firm. It's clean now. Legitimate. Everything it should have been from the beginning. My father retired early. He spends his time volunteering at the mosque, working in his garden and slowly, carefully rebuilding his relationship with my mother. They're not back together. I don't know if they ever will be. But they have coffee every Sunday morning. They talk. They laugh sometimes. It's more than I ever thought we'd have. As for me, I threw myself even harder into my work. But this time it wasn't about building walls. It was about building something real. Something that mattered. I started a foundation to help families affected by financial crimes. Legal support, counseling services, advocacy. We're small but we're growing. And every time I help someone escape from under the thumb of a manipulator, every time I see a family reunited after being torn apart by greed and threats, I think about that shoebox in my father's office. Those letters my mother wrote for 15 years, never knowing if anyone would read them. Never giving up hope. She taught me something important, that love doesn't quit even when it seems impossible. That truth, no matter how buried, eventually finds its way to light. And that revenge isn't always about destruction. Sometimes the best revenge is healing what was broken. Reclaiming what was stolen. Standing up and saying, no more. Tariq took 15 years from us. But we took the rest of his life from him. And more importantly, we took back our own lives. Our family and our future. That's not revenge. That's justice. I still drive to San Antonio once a month to have dinner with my mother. We cook together. Her kitchen always smells like za'atar and cardamom now, just like I remember from childhood. My father joins us sometimes. It's strange and wonderful and painful all at once. But we're learning. Learning how to be together. Learning how to forgive. Learning that families can break and still find ways to mend. Last month we went through my mother's apartment and found more letters. Ones she'd written but never sent. Hundreds of them documenting 15 years of exile. Her hopes. Her fears. Her love for us never wavered. We read them together, the three of us. And we cried. But this time we cried together. Tariq will be in prison until he's 70 years old. By the time he gets out, if he gets out, he'll have nothing. No business, no reputation, no family willing to claim him. He'll be exactly what he made my mother. Alone. I don't feel guilty about that. I used to think revenge would make me like him. Cold, calculating, cruel. But what I did wasn't about revenge. It was about truth. About refusing to let an evil man continue destroying lives. About saying that some things, family, love, justice, are worth fighting for. Even if it takes 15 years to get there. This story may not be the exact story you connect with, but if you've ever fought for justice or stood up against someone who thought they were untouchable, drop a comment below. Share your story. Let's build a community of people who refuse to stay silent. And hit that subscribe button because there are more stories like this one. Stories about ordinary people doing extraordinary things in the name of what's right. Thank you for listening. I'll see you in the next one.